and 2, feels encouraged, and 3, walks away from the book with a feeling of hope. So that's my intention, and that's what I for listeners and viewers,
Yeah.
That's how I hope you to convince you to look it up and buy it, because I'd say that that's what I'm trying to give to you as a writer, as an artist, in sharing my story.
What does legacy mean to you now as a son, a fighter, a writer, and a man of faith? What does legacy mean?
A son, a fighter, a writer, and a man of faith.
Yes.
So as a son, I share with you what I share with everyone else, in my nature, which is I am a combination of my mom and dad.
Yeah.
No matter.
Is there anything better than a trip getting ready?
Nope.
For a long journey where our podcast released a new epi, searching for a fade fiending, new fixation. Giving this a subscribe is the same sensation. Started with the day ones, they gave us fuel to support the season. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here for a reason. Notification bells, tap some friends, all to let you know. Check your Bluetooth, connect, talk your words and I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is a man whose life reads like a novel because he literally turned it into one. My guest today is a championship boxer, respected trainer, and award-winning writer. From over 100 amateur fights and Golden Gloves glory to deep spiritual searching, loss, faith, and finally writing a book born from grief, discipline, and love. Mark's journey cuts across boxing, art, heritage, and belief in a way you don't hear every day. His book, It's About Time, millions of copies sold for Dad, was written in the shadow of losing both his parents. In the middle of chaos, cultural unrest, and personal transformation, and it went on to win a major literary award. But this story isn't just about boxing or writing. It's about identity, responsibility, faith, and what it really means to become the man you were meant to be. Today, we're talking about fighters, fathers, faith, grief, purpose, and the moments that shape us forever. This is going to be a fun one. Let's get into it. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Well, Donato, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Awesome. I want to start with I used to box in the Army. I want to start with boxing, discipline, and identity. Okay. You started boxing at 10 years old and had over 100 amateur fights. How did boxing shape the man you became outside the ring?
You know, I think the biggest thing it had, the biggest benefit it had for me was confidence. Yeah. Right? It just gave me self-confidence. You know, I remember, so there's this guy, I mentioned a play I wrote in the book that's called Standoff on the Irish Road. It's kind of about the troubles. I spent some time in 1998 in Ireland, both in Dublin and then in Belfast and Derry and Portadown, where there was a lot of stuff happening. And I was going to get it produced and never got produced. But this the guy that was going to help me produce it is a guy named E.G. Bailey, who's based in Minneapolis, and he ran this organization called the Minnesota Spoken Word Association, and there was this place called the Dinky Towner. It's not there anymore. Now it's called the Blarney Pub, but it's within the University of Minnesota East Bank neighborhood in Minneapolis. And I remember going in there one time. At that time, I spent a lot of years just by choice, not because of a problem. I didn't drink at all. And I walked into this bar, and the guy, and I'm at this point, this is the early 2000s. I'm about 31 years old. Mm-hmm. I walk in there, and I lean up against the bar, and I I ordered a cherry Coke with no ice, and there's this guy, kind of a vato kind of guy, is a kind of tough Latino, really skinny guy, and he looks at me, and I look at him, I kind of nod to him, like just to say hi. He gives me this hard look, and I just and then kind of looked away, and I just kind of laughed and thought, so what? I don't care, and the thing was, and it dawned on me at that time, I was in my 30s, and I realized, my whole life I was kind of skinny too, because I fought I was a lightweight boxer. I was a junior lightweight boxer. I mean, a lightweight, a junior welterweight. And I thought, some of the guys I saw box were really, from the heavier weights, really big, muscular guys. And I always thought of myself as, because before I boxed, I kind of got pushed around a little bit. I never thought of myself as a tough guy or an intimidating person. I thought to myself, looked around, I thought, no one in here could touch me. You know what I mean? No one in this whole place. But I thought, and that's the kind of confidence I have, but it's not like I ever want to get into a fight or anything like that. But I think about some people. One time I was with a friend on the West Bank neighborhood of the University of Minnesota. A guy I'd gone to high school with, a really small guy, short. And we stepped out of this cafe that we were in and walked up to the corner, and a couple of, we're both white guys, a couple of black guys kind of walked by. And they're like East African guys, and I saw the way my friend looked, and then kind of looked away and kind of moved away and everything. And I kind of laughed myself. I thought, these guys aren't going to hurt you, I mean, they're just, they're non-threatening and everything. And this is a suburban guy too, and I thought, it's people from their experiences in life growing up, they get different perceptions, and they're really, and it's a natural thing too. I think it's a self-preservation thing. I don't think I wouldn't call my friend a racist. Yeah. And the guy who gave me that look, Latino guy, come on, I started boxing when I was 10 years old at the Mexican American Boxing Club. My hero was this old Mexican World War II combat veteran, Emmett Yanez, God rest his soul. He's actually, I mentioned his name at the end of the first poem in this book. Yeah. But he, so it's like, it wasn't a racial thing. It was just that the guy was looking at me, and he just kind of had to put up that tough front. And, that's one of those things that about boxing, because I boxed, I never thought of myself as a tough guy. But then the stuff I did in the boxing ring was all controlled stuff. And so I felt like it didn't feel like a real dangerous thing to me that I was doing. Yeah. And then there were a couple of times when I've gotten into fights. I work now part-time as a bouncer. So like, it's not like I never have had any confrontations outside of the ring that boxing didn't help me with. But then the other thing, I'm talking about confidence, and I'm talking about physical well-being and taking care of myself in life. Yeah. The other thing that, my parents, I started boxing and I wasn't a student. I didn't like school. I didn't like to read. I didn't read that well. I was always in the slow reading class and everything. And my brother was a year older than me. Well, we're Irish twins, so he's 13 days less than a year older. But he sometime late high school, or maybe around the time we got into college, one time he was talking to me and started teasing me about how, mom and dad tricked you into reading when you became a boxer, because what they did is the first Christmas that year was 5th grade year that I started boxing. They gave me a subscription to the Ring magazine, the most famous boxing magazine in the world, monthly magazine. And my mom would always see me when I was at the grocery store with her on the weekends. We'd stop at the rack. My brother and I would stop at the rack and look at because we were into the professional wrestling. When I was looking at the wrestling, I'd look at the wrestling, I'd look at the bodybuilding magazines, and then I'd look at the boxing magazines. I was really drawn to the boxing magazines, and I started boxing, so they got me that subscription, and I started out just looking at the pictures because the pictures look cool, right? Yeah. Yeah, and the athletes look at the shape they're in, look at it, right? Yes. And I want to be like that. And then there are captions underneath them saying what's happening in the fight. So I'd read those. Then I would go to the middle of the magazine and I'd look at the rankings from heavyweight champion all the way down to junior flyweight champion.
Yeah.
And not only would I read the champion and the top 10 rankings, but I'd read their names. I'd read where they're from, their weights and everything. And I learned that LBS means is abbreviation for pounds, stuff like that. I mean, they're little things that intellectually help one in, academically speaking. And I would read where the man was from, and a lot of times it'd be a different country. Say the city, Manila, Philippines, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I realized that's a city that's in the Philippines country. So I started learning stuff like that, and so it made me much more literate and much more articulate and everything. And then I looked at it long enough. I was like, what the hell? I might as well read an article, So I started to enjoy reading a little bit. And, that's probably one of the things that led me towards being a writer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your mom definitely tricked you. She saw what you were interested in. She's like, I can do something with that.
Yeah.
What did it feel like becoming a Golden Gloves champion at 17? And how did that success affect your identity back then?
Well, first of all, it felt great. Okay. Second of all, I felt great, but I think one of my biggest weaknesses was comparing myself to others. Right, because I won my first fight when I was 10 years old. I didn't get beat up, but I lost my second fight, and I was really down on myself because I modeled myself. The guy that was a big guy at that time was Sugar Ray Leonard, and I heard that his record was 135 wins and 5 losses as an amateur. I thought, man, I can only lose 4 more fights now.
Yeah.
Which really the healthy thing to do is compare yourself to how you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. And but I felt really vindicated. I had lost the previous year to a guy named Jason Tintes, who I almost knocked out in the first round. But when I hit him with the first punch and he staggered back, I knew I told myself, jump in and hit him, and I just froze. And the first 2 rounds are close. The third round, he beat the hell out of me. And he was ranked number 9 in the country at the time. He'd gone to the nationals and was a semifinals the year before. And I always had it all planned out. I was going to win the national, the U.S. championships and the national Golden Gloves when I was 16. I was going to win them again when I was 17. When I was 18, I was going to graduate high school. I was going to go win the Pan American Games. And then a year later, I'd win the Olympics. And, I'd be a millionaire by the time I'm 21 years old. But, the dream that you have, so that it was kind of that's the 2 sides of the coin to how I felt about it. But in fact, when I did win it, though, I mean, I made the finals of the Midwest Golden Gloves 4 times, and I lost to the 3 of those times, and so that was a really a big deal. It was also my first national tournament. I was 14 years old, the National Junior Olympics, and I made it to the quarterfinals, and I didn't get knocked off my feet, but I got stopped in the first round by a guy named Jamal Hinton from New Carrollton, Maryland. This is at the 112-pound flyweight division. I really should have been fighting 119. I was losing too much weight, and I went up 2 weights the next year, but Hinton was this incredible boxer. He beat, and I don't know if you're going to remember all these guys from how well you're going to know these guys from the 80s. But in 1988 or 87, that same year that I won the Upper Midwest Golden Gloves and went to the National Golden Gloves, although I lost, making it that far allowed me to go to the Western Pan American Games trials. So I could have, they broke it down for the U.S. Olympic Festival was in New Orleans that year, and the top 4 guys fought off to be on the Pan American Games team. So they had if you were, and they had just started this thing called the Junior World Tournament. So if you were 17 or 18 years old and you won the National Golden Gloves or the U.S. Amateur Championships, the U.S. What's now called USA Boxing is the U.S. Amateur Boxing Federation at the time. You either could go try to the Final Four for the Pan Am Games trials, or you could go on to the U.S. Junior World Team, which went down to Havana, Cuba. And I went to the Olympic Training Center that year, and I lost at 132 pounds. But that was the only time that I saw Jamal Hinton again. I went and said hi to him and everything. He couldn't believe I was as big as I was because he was only 119. But he had beaten that year. He was there to train for the Junior World Team to go to Havana. And he had beaten Kennedy McKinney. Kennedy McKinney, those two were rivals. Kennedy McKinney beat him in the finals of the Olympic box office the next year. I went to the Olympics and was a gold medalist and became featherweight champion of the world.
Wow.
Hinton broke my nose in 1984. He went on after 1988 turning professional. He fought for the Kronk Gym with Manuel Stewart, and he got to be 22-0, and he was the WBC super bantamweight, which is like junior featherweight, 122-pound intercontinental champion. And I always wanted to say, okay, the guy that broke my nose was a champion of the world, and he pissed me off because he just decided he didn't have the killer instinct anymore, and he quit boxing. And I always wanted to meet him, and this is not a happy ending to the story because I always wanted to meet him and write about him. But unfortunately, from what I heard about him, he lived a pretty good life. But he died, I think, in 2021 in a car accident in Washington D.C., I believe. But he was an incredible boxer, and I'm this kind of roundabout way to make the point that I'm making from the question you asked about how I felt when I won the Midwest Golden Gloves. Man, that was 3 years after when I had 20 fights in a row that I won, and then Jamal Hinton broke my nose, and I started, win a fight or two fights and lose a fight. Well, I said I couldn't build the streak back up again, and like I said, the year before I'd lost the finals for the Upper Midwest Golden Gloves, and it took me 3 years to get back to a national tournament at that point. So,
wow,
that's one thing about boxing is that it gives you a lot of confidence, but also you get to certain points. Sometimes you get a little bit derailed, Yeah. That's really important about trying to understand psychologically what you have to do and the sacrifices you have to make to continue on with these kind of things,
Yeah, it does. Looking back now, what do you think boxing was really preparing you for in life?
It was really preparing me for the mundane things I have to do.
Yeah.
Just doing regular jobs, and doing the preparation for that which will be the accomplishment. I mean, when you win a boxing match and your hand is raised, it feels great and it's a big accomplishment. And if you win a championship, you're given a medal or a trophy or a belt, and people congratulate you. But then that's maybe 5 minutes. I mean, you maybe got 20 minutes of that, and then it's over. And then you still got to go back home to whatever your life is, whatever your relationships are, however your family is. And then if you want to keep that, you have to keep on going. I was before the interview, we were talking about New York, and I was telling you about times I've gone to New York and going to Gleason's gym and everything. I've got the chance to meet some world champions through the Gleason's gym community, and one of them is Matthew Saad Muhammad. Do you remember a guy named Matthew Saad Muhammad, or do you know that fighter?
No.
He was from Philadelphia, and he was light heavyweight champion of the world for a long time in the 1980s. And I remember on a weekend sports show when he was going to fight and he was defending his title, he was being interviewed before the fight when they're showing him training and everything. He says, I thought when I won the championship of the world that it was going to be easier, But no, it's not. It's harder. Every single day is harder. And to hold it and to keep on holding the title, it's not easier than it was before you won the title. It's harder to keep doing it. You got to work that much harder, and there's that much more challenge on you and everything. And that's a pretty I haven't always thought about it that much, but thinking about it now as I tell you that, I think it's pretty indicative of most things in the world, because I mean, if you accomplish becoming the head of a company, you win you get an elected position in politics, or you just you get your you get your hot dog stand going, and there's a lot of people buying it, and maybe you get 2 or 3 hot dog stands, and you're the guy that's known downtown for the guy that sells the hot dogs. I mean, you still have your competitors coming trying to knock you off it every day. You still have to figure out so many things, and it doesn't end, does it?
Yeah.
I mean, for you being the top podcaster, you're still going to have to come up with ideas every day.
Exactly. No, you're right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your writing, the purpose and the, since we were talking about it, podcasts are coming up with stuff, the creative struggle. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You always knew you were a writer, yet it took years before your first book came into the world. What kept pulling you back to the page?
I just always did it. And the other thing is, so the title is about, so it's about time, parentheses, millions of copies sold for Dad, right? And that's, I talk, I don't think it's in the second chapter, second or third chapter, I say a lot of my titles are amphiboles. And amphibole is a logical fallacy. It's a statement that could mean more than one thing. Like I mentioned that play earlier, it's called Stand Off on the Irish Road. I mean, you could be telling someone to stand off on. It's like you're standing off. I mean, it's like am I telling you to stand off and just stand on the Irish Road? Or is it, but really it's about a standoff, 2 sides standing off on this road.
Yes.
Right? But it's about time. I say in the beginning, I say, one, I read that little passage right here. It's about time is a phrase friends of mine often hear me say. Fighters I train, people I hang around with, and family members hear those words from me when they do something, no matter how significant or uneventful, oftentimes with a semi-irreverent tone. They say they'll be here soon. They bought a new car, they just got a job, or they're getting married. I reply, it's about time. The implication is we've been waiting forever, and you should have done this a long time ago. But it's also just me making light of the situation and voicing my approval, showing my support. Luckily for me, people are merciful enough to put up with my obnoxious personality, so I actually have friends. But it's about time, finally, I publish a book, as Dad knew too well. And the thing is, I'm watching my dad. I'm supposed to pick up my parents at the Twin Cities International Airport. They're a 4-day vacation down at in San Francisco. They're staying in the Marines Memorial Club. And 5 minutes from the airport, they're sitting in the rental car in the Costco, and they are talking about how much they love each other, how great their marriage is. They can't wait to get back to their family. My dad starts the car, puts it into gear, has a heart attack and collapses over the wheel. My mom puts it in park, jumps out, and yells for help. And there's a health fair going on, and so 2 EMTs take a defibrillator and they keep him alive. And my mom calls me from the hospital. And a week later, like 10 days later, I'm with my mom. He's on life support. I'm praying over him as he dies. And as I'm standing there looking at him, I'm saying, I need more time. He hasn't seen me get married and have children. And that's one thing I wanted him to see me do so bad. He hasn't, he's not going to see me become champion of the world, but, maybe he could see me train a champion. I mean, there's so many things I'd like him to be able to say, that's what my son did. And that I always said I was going to do. And I said, I haven't even published a book yet. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got the talent to do this. I should have done it a long time ago. And we had a fight, which I talk about at the end of chapter 1. The roughly maybe 10 years earlier, he said, how come at this age couldn't you could publish at least 5 books by now? What's wrong with you? And he was basically telling me, why don't you just get something done, make it complete, give it to someone, say, is this good enough?
Yes.
And if it's good, just put it out there. It doesn't have to be some big publisher, and then move on to the next thing and see how it does. If it takes off and sells great, millions of copies, great, but at least you're moving on to the next thing then.
Yeah.
So that's the intention of doing this. But all that time, what brought me back to writing all those years is I was doing what my dad was complaining about me doing, which was I was trying to make it all perfect.
Mhm.
I talk about a novel in here that I wrote. I actually rewrote it in 1996, so it's to beginning to end. And I just moved, and I had it's I know where it is. It's buried in a box, and I've got a lot of things I got to do. And this is legitimate. I've got a lot of things I got to do, but I have different ideas for novels, but I can't get them done if I don't actually sit and do it. And I also have to do stuff to pay the rent and everything too.
Yes.
Right? But this particular novel was stolen from my car. It was one copy that I had in 1995. A brick was thrown through my window, and someone had taken off with my backpack, and I had to rewrite the thing. And I'm glad that some of the stuff that was in there got taken away, because I think back on it, and there are a couple of things. If I put it together in a completed form, I don't think I would like to have said what I said. But what always kept bringing me back was I was always planning on, I'm going to write something big. I'm going to write something big eventually. I'm going to write something that means something, that people are going to relate to, that they're going to identify with. And also, I always kept writing because it also is a way of expressing things that I maybe tried to express to other people, maybe tried to explain to other people, wasn't able to, but I was able to put it on the page. And, always intended to get it out there. And some stuff I have gotten out there, I mean, I've got some poems published and stuff. I got a bunch of journalism published. I just hadn't published any short stories or long form fiction or anything heretofore. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to. And, God willing, I'm just gonna keep writing and hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, there are going to be more than two more publications.
Your book, It's About Time, millions of copies sold for Dad. It blends memoir, poetry, as you mentioned, grief, as you mentioned, faith and heritage. And I want to come back to that faith and heritage a little later, but how do you know this was the right way to tell your story?
So I mentioned this guy named Danny Kleckel. Boy, the guy, I mentioned him in interviews and stuff like that. And he's the first or second. He's the first jacket quote on the back. And he's such a smart ass. Mark Connor writes about boxing in the city of St. Paul better than anyone. He's an inspiration for me. He's a valuable resource I steal from every chance I get. But I wrote this poem that was, it had broken a 2-year writer's streak or writing block. And I knew he worked out at the gym where he was training boxers, and he used to put on poetry and stuff. And so I pulled him out into my car and said, "I want you to think of this poem." He said, "This is good, man." He says, "You got to get on stage." It took me 2-3 years before I even did. By the first chapter, I talked about the first 3 poems of this book. I premiered them on stage on this little reading that he was putting on. But he was telling me at the time, I was the novel that got stolen from my car, and I rewrote, and I got to get it right, so it's just right. 'Cause I've got an idea actually for a trilogy from it. but there's a lot of details to it. But the thing is, I'm saying I gotta get this novel. I gotta get this novel. He said, no, don't do that. You gotta do a chapbook. Do a chapbook of poetry. You get a book of poetry out. So
Yeah.
I started gathering stuff, and he's gonna help me put it together. And then I got as I say in the book, it kind of got lost. It kind of got lost in the snow because which is appropriate to the time of my premiering these poems, because it was in 2019, was one of the snowiest winters that we had. But there was a blizzard on the night that I did that reading. But since it got kind of tossed to the side like that, one thing happened after another between it was really 2017. So 2017, 2019, then my dad died. And I'm looking at him and I said, that's it. I'm writing a book. In the next year, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to get it published. I don't care how far it gets. I'm going to at least have a book out and published, because I can say I've accomplished something, and something that, I don't feel like my dad has to be disappointed that I haven't, I don't be disappointed myself. But the thing is, so I kind of, over the next year, now remember what happened. He died on September 30th, 2019. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember what our country was like at that time, because my mom and I were talking in the hospital room about what's going on with politics in our country at that time, because they were talking about the phone call, Donald Trump's phone call to I think to Zelensky, but to in Ukraine, and Joe Biden and the Burisma thing, and they're talking about impeaching him for that phone conversation. And this statement is not a statement about this party having great politics or that party having great politics. The idea that stupid conversation is something to impeach him about, and a lot of constitutional experts at the time are saying this is just stupid, and I really believe that. But we're talking about that. We're talking about just everything that's going on, and I just think things were just crazy at that time. So my dad died. That's happening, and then the year changes over, and it feels like I'm mourning. I'm starting to feel like, man, things are starting to get better and everything, and I'm wondering, am I still going to make this move? I was talking about making this move out to New York, and being a trainer and a writer out there, and then all of a sudden, in March comes along, and the coronavirus and the shutdown happens, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? It's at one point in the book I say, Dad died, then the whole world went crazy, and well, the shutdown happens, and we're sort of adjusting to it, and then the thing with George Floyd happens, and then, oh man, I'm like, I'm just thinking to myself, come on, everybody, let's calm down and figure this thing out. I understand let's have a demonstration, but all of a sudden, everything starts burning down.
Yeah.
And I'm living in the metropolitan area where it all happens. And my dad grew up across the street from St. Columba on that's 5 blocks south of University Avenue in the Midway area of St. Paul. And University Avenue is we're the secondary city in this situation, but that's where all the buildings are burning. And my mom is from her family is from the Holy Rosary Parish in South Minneapolis, in the Phillips neighborhood, where it's across the street. That's church. It's across the street from Little Earth Housing Project, American Indian Housing Project. That's 7 blocks north of where the police station is, and where that gets burnt down, and all the stuff on Lake Street. And Darwin Strong was, so I worked, this kind of comes into the heritage and identity thing and everything. I worked this place called Andayung. It's spelled AINDAHYUNG. It's 3 words in the Ojibwe language. It's Ojibwe for our home. There's a place in St. Paul called Our Home Center, or Andayung, Our Home Center. It's a temporary emergency homeless shelter. It's an American Indian run, so it's not just for American Indians, but it's an American Indian program.
Yeah.
Primarily Native American Indian children that come there, but it's a temporary emergency homeless shelter for kids aged 5 to 17 with a capacity of 5 boys and 5 girls. So, and the population would change periodically depending on, you know, if you get placed back with family or whatever. But Darwin Strong, who I met from there, he was when I worked there in the 90s, his wife, Gabby Strong, was executive director. He had convinced me to go. I'd gone to 3 Sundance ceremonies, which is a Lakota religious ceremony on the Rosebud Reservation, 95, 96, 97. And from 99 through 2003, he convinced me to go with him and Gabby and this spiritual community in a place called a Dakota community called Prairie Island, which is about 38 miles outside of St. Paul. As a group, we went down to these Sundance on Kyle, South Dakota, which is on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Anyway, he contacted me the day after. Well, I guess I say the day after, it was Thursday. It was actually the wee morning hours of Friday that the police station was burnt down. So that Saturday, he sent me a message saying, will you go to the American Indian Center on Franklin Avenue and join up with the guys that are protecting Native buildings? And so American Indian Movement, AIM, which is an armed organization, and some other leaders in the Native community put out a call for protectors of Native buildings, because across the street from the police station, McGeezy Communications, a newly opened Native community center next to the post office, along the post office that got burnt down. So, you know, I was at the house, and my mom had asked, said, who's that? You know, I said, oh, that's Darwin. He wants me to go help protect buildings. I said, I will. She said, please don't. I said, I already told him I'm going to. And she said, don't bring your gun.
Yeah.
And I say in the book, well, I won't say anything more about that. But I couldn't go in the house into my dad's gun safe and get one of the rifles, which I would have done because she would have seen me. But I've you know, it's a right to carry state. I got a permit, and I had my pistol, and there were guys with rifles and everything, you know, protecting and everything like that. So all that stuff happened. You know, the months after my dad died, and then I go through the following summer, and you know, I'd been a taxi driver for money a few times in my life, and I'd been doing you know, rideshare driving, and the coronavirus had happened, and my mom had been diagnosed with arterial pulmonary hypertension, which is a rare heart disease that eventually just gets you. It's a blockage of the arteries between your lungs and your heart, and it eventually gets in. When she died in 2023, it was really hard. It was really hard. I was taking care of her completely, and it really diminishes you. It's a really tough disease. But I stopped driving because I didn't want someone to get me sick and then me get my mom sick, you know, stuff like that. So like a lot of not working during that time, right? And so I actually was like, you know, I'm not a big drinker, but like, you know, a couple of times a week I'd drink like a full 40-ounce bottle of Guinness, you know. I mean, it's not like really excessive, but like, you know, I was just crying every day because my dad's gone, you know. I mean, I wasn't crying in front of everyone, but I was like, I'd spend time at home just thinking about stuff and just regretting stuff. And then you come along to the fall and getting towards Christmas time, I said to myself, you know, I got really determined. I said, look, I'm going to do something right away this year coming up in 2021 that my dad would be really happy with. I'm going to write this book. I'll make sure I'm going to get it published. So what I did is I sat down between, then I say it in the book, I think the dates were like from February 9th to the 29th of March, but whatever day it was on March that I finished the book, it was Holy Monday, the Monday of Holy Week before Easter, that I actually finished the first draft of the book. And I just sat down 5 weeks and I wrote it every day. And I already knew what the story was. I knew what I was going to write. And so, you know, I wrote it you asked me how I can't remember if you asked me how did I know to write it in the form that I did, or what made me think that was the best way to do it. And I thought, I want to write a book. I want to write prose. I want to tell the story. And I've got these poems, and that's content for it that I'll put in there. When I write the poems, I'll tell you about what was going on in my life when I wrote that, why I wrote it, how, and then lead into something else, to another story. And that's how I do it, and I string it together that way. And I think it works pretty well, And
yeah.
And what I wanted to say about the whole situation of our country at the time, and the whole situation of life, and just what happened with losing my dad, and me being the state of life I'm in right now, so I was just turning 50, and I'm single. I'm not attracted to women who don't go through the cycle anymore, because I'm attracted to women that maybe I could have children with. And so each year that goes by in life, a man has to take into consideration, am I too old for such women or not, And my whole value, when I look at it, when I look at the American Indian experience, the American Indian values that I learned, and everybody always talked about family, and they always talked about how much they love their kids. And my family, I've come from a Catholic family, and I look back both sides of my family for 5-6 generations. Each set of grandparents married till they died. My parents are married till death they parted, and my values that I'm expressing in the book are values of love, family, and life. And what I'm trying to do is, I know that some readers may read this book and enter into reading the book without sharing the same worldview that I have, but I'm hoping and praying, and I believe I come close to accomplishing the goal of the reader reads this book, and one feels respected, irrespective of whether agreeing with everything I say or not, feels respected, and 2, feels encouraged, and 3, walks away from the book with a feeling of hope. So that's my intention, and that's what I for listeners and viewers, that's how I hope to convince you to look it up and buy it, because I'd say that that's what I'm trying to give to you as a writer, as an artist, in sharing my story.
What does legacy mean to you now, as a son, a fighter, a writer, and a man of faith? What does legacy mean?
A son, a fighter, a writer, and a man of faith.
Yes.
So as a son, I share with you what I share with everyone else, in my nature, which is, I am a combination of my mom and dad.
Yeah.
No matter what family situation I'm in, no matter how I'm raised, I'm a combination of my mom and dad. I think that's I really believe that's the most important fundamental reality for us as a people, as a nation, to remember, for all of us. And so whatever clashes we have with each other, whatever disagreements we have with each other, on the whole, in the outer society, and when it comes to policies, we have to remember that, and try to make sure that we have a world that supports the coming together of woman and man to enable to have children and have a family. And that's what makes us strong. That's what makes us strong as a nation, and that's the way to continue growing, right? So as a son, I'm a combination of my mom and my dad. So I represent the two of them. And I was, thinking, just today and this last week, a couple of times, for a moment, I was thinking about different little things I was doing, about how my mom would handle this, how my dad would handle that, and how, Yeah, you know, I mean, let's face it, I'm a grown-up adult, so I don't have time to wallow in um sadness over the fact that they're not here anymore, because what do you expect to happen when we grow up, right? But
Yep.
the thing is, I'm really grateful that they gave me examples of how to just survive in life and how to try to enjoy life.
Hmm.
Right? And just to be kind to people and to be cooperative with people and to try to make things better for myself and others. Um, so legacy, fighter,
Yeah.
so it's writer and son. So that's the thing. As a son, as a fighter, um, you know, so I can't be a fighter anymore. Certain time in life, you got. I mean, like I talk in here about different professionals I sparred with. You know, I kind of held on. I was going to have some professional fights and didn't get around to it, and uh, you know, because I was always kind of torn between, well, I'm going to be a writer. I got to put so much time to being a writer, but
Yeah.
you know, I could maybe if I had a few professional fights, just I could have a little bit of a memory I leave people is to people seeing me fight professionally. So, like, Will Grigsby, who became the IBF junior flyweight champion of the world, I was his main sparring partner after I stopped boxing. Um, Between 1995 between 1994 and 1990 to about 1996 until he became USBA flyweight champion. He got ranked in the top 10. I kind of walked away from it for a while. Then back in two, I think it was 2011. I was sparring with a guy named Mohammed Kiongo. First time I saw him, I talk about this in the book too. First time I saw him, I was working the overnight Friday night position at that Andai Young shelter, and they just gotten a cable subscription, and the evening staff had left the TV on. So I gotten all the kids to bed. I was supposed to be cleaning the house, but I stopped and started watching ESPN Friday Night Fights were on. This guy Mohammed Kiongo was on there, and I ended up sparring with him. I remember 9-10 rounds one time, and and that was a cool thing to do. But that was, I think, 42 then. He was 29. I was 42. He was getting ready to go to Uganda, where he was from, for a 10-round fight, and at a certain point, you just have to stop taking punches, because otherwise you're going to, end up with pugilistic dementia. And one of the trainers I mentioned in this book, Dennis Presley, the one who developed Grigsby to the world championship. Unfortunately, in 2020, that's what he died from at age 71. He died from pugilistic dementia. It's a really hard thing to watch someone go through.
Yeah.
But as a boxer and as a trainer, what I want to be remembered for is the guys that are in Sun now, and now it's also the women that I may train, that I respected them, that I looked out for their safety, and that I helped them develop their skills to the highest degree possible. Because whatever I know, I share. If I can help someone succeed with it, then that's a continuation of everything I've learned. So it's part of myself is going into that. It's just like having. It's kind of metaphorically speaking. It's sort of similar to, like I said earlier, about mom and dad combining into a child. It's just you keep the generations going, you keep life going. And I think that's something. That God is put into us. It's kind of a reflection of our nature of being children of God, really. So that's a touch on what I'd like to be remembered for, in terms of as a fighter. As a writer, I hope that I am able to produce literature that is an observation of the truth of the dignity of the human being.
Yeah.
That's ultimately it. I mean, whatever story I tell, I mean, if I can come up with a good fiction story, and I'll have to have a villain in it, or I'll have to have people, but there's human frailty, there's human, and there's a desire. There's always a desire. I believe that there's a human desire that's natural to get back to God. That's where we come from, and that we're in this life we're separated. I do believe different cultures and different religious traditions have different kind of stories about the fall of humanity. I believe that we're meant to be godly. We're meant to be that we're by nature good because we're of God. But there's something the Catholic term is concupiscence. It's kind of desire or love of things that are sinful, or attraction to things that are bad for us.
Yeah.
That's kind of a natural thing that we have to fight. But that there's always the grace of God that's offered to us, and we have to make a free will choice for that. And that free will choice is actually a choice to love. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, what it is. And I want to make observations in my writing that express that nature of what human beings are. I mean, I got some examples in here,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure. Should I read some of it to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll start. Since I'm talking about that nature of human dignity, I'm gonna go with the third poem in here to start with, which is a love poem. It's called "Two Pilgrim Souls, Anam Cara." Okay. Now, Anam Cara, those are two Irish words, and they mean soul friend.
Okay.
So, this is written on September 11th, 2017. Over a century ago, an epic poet from the land of our shared heritage wrote a poem to a woman, loving her soul's very pilgrimage. His was a bitter poem, or so it seems, tempered by friendship's sweetness, soothing his broken dreams. It is true a man like me could feel the same for you, become love run away, taunting your memory in your future aged day. But instead, let it be said, here on the ground and high among the stars, this man loves the very monstrance you are. And so, Anam Cara, Mokushla, Astor Mokri, remember, if you ever decide to be with me, one monstrance too, we two will be. Now, do you know what a monstrance is?
I don't.
Okay, monstrance, you can think of like demonstrate, demonstrance, right? Demonstrate, right? So,
Okay. Yeah.
So a monstrance is a gold cross in the Catholic Church. You put on the altar, and then there's this thing called a luna in the middle. It's a round circular device that opens. It's got a door and it opens.
Yeah.
And the host, the bread, which in consecrated host is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. You put that in there, and it's displayed. So there's this thing called adoration, where Catholics will just sit or kneel and pray and contemplate, and it's a way of being with Jesus, right? So when I'm saying, I'm basically calling marriage a monstrance, man and woman together. Now the poem itself, I say over a century ago, an epic poet from the land of our shared heritage. The poet I'm referring to is William Butler Yeats. Wrote a poem to a woman loving her soul's very pilgrimage. There's a line in this poem called "When You Grow Old." He wrote to Maud Gonne. Maud Gonne was a famous actress, and he was madly in love with her. And she ended up kind of wanting to be friends with him, but kind of she really rejected him. And his rival for her love was John McBride, who was one of the 1916 Easter Rebellion leaders, who was actually executed. And the poem on Easter 1916, written by William Butler Yeats, is a really famous poem, and he actually honors John McBride in that poem. He kind of makes a mention of how he hurt someone who he loved, but he honors him too, because they all sacrificed for Ireland. But when I say, it is true, a man like me could be the same for you, or could feel the same for you, become love run away, taunting your memory in your future age of day. When you grow old, he's telling her, you're going to remember there was someone who loved the very pilgrim soul in you, right? But she's going to be old and her looks are going to be faded, but he's going to be rising, because, he's going to have all his, which was actually true. He was this extremely famous poet. He's, but then Anam Cara is Irish for soul friend. Mokushla means my darling, and Astor McCree is treasure of my heart. That's what those mean in the Irish language. But that's kind of touches on what I'm saying about the nature of humanity. About we treat each other, we think of each other, and we think of ourselves as not that much, and we're mortal, and there's a lot we can't accomplish. But I think that we're not meant to die, even though we have to die naturally, because before, and I don't know how Christian you are, or it's because this is a very Christian oriented view of life, but and it's a metaphor. We don't know exactly what happened, but the eating of the fruit from the tree was the first turning away from God, and that's when death entered the world. And I've got this other poem in here to my friend David Reese, who died in 2018 at 49 years old from a motorcycle crash. And I actually make some mention of this, about how it's called the happy fault, or the happy fall, that that God becomes man to redeem us when through Jesus, when Jesus Christ becomes incarnate. But then the other poem I'm going to read you is this one's about boxing. This one's a little more upbeat, although it's not necessarily happy-go-lucky, but it's called The Perfect Metaphor, which I wrote on Monday, August 21st, 2017. And this is one about these 4 boxing coaches I mentioned.
Okay.
The perfect metaphor to describe boxing is jazz. There's a rhythm to every fight. I learned this from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White. A fighter has a rhythm, and the only way to beat him is for you to break it and establish your own. That's where improvisation begins. No one knows where it will lead or where it will end. Jazz is the perfect metaphor to describe boxing. Every fight has its rhythm, upon which is added improvisation. I learned that from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White, who practiced collaboration with Emmett Yanez and Bobby Zamora. The 2 men taught me to fight.
Yeah.
So Emmett Yanez was that World War II veteran I told you about, who taught me to box. He was my coach up till I was 17. His wife had a stroke, and he had to take care of her until she died in 1993. So I had to have other coaches. And Bobby Zamora was his one of his prize fighters, who was 10 years older. He was my head coach for a while. In the last couple of years, I went to Dennis Presley, and his mentor was Rock White, who founded the Interstate Youth League, which is the black gym in St. Paul. And yeah, I was there when Rock died too, man. It was Dennis and I actually carried his casket. Those guys had a really big influence on my life, and Dennis is the one to kind of talk to me about jazz being kind of like boxing, and then Rock White, he gave me a copy of Miles Davis, the cassette tape of Miles Davis.
Yeah.
It was he listened to jazz all the time. He's a bad dude, man. He was so cool and so smooth. He had this maroon Oldsmobile with Delta 88, I think, and his black leather jacket, black rim, snap rim cap, and the album was a tribute to Jack Johnson. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know. Do you know that one?
I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah. The first side is one piece called "Right Off." The second side is a piece called "Yesternow," and then the very end of the second side, you hear a guy comes on and says, "I'm Jack Johnson, heavyweight champion of the world. I'm black, all right. I'll never let them forget it. I'm black, all right. They'll never let me forget it." Yeah. He gave me that. So those guys really, I mean, I didn't come from a family that was broken or anything. My dad was always there. He's always in my life. But you got to kind of got to be your own man. And you kind of got to be away from your dad and kind of figure it out yourself. And it's good. I think maybe the fact that my dad was an upright man, when I sought other men to be that were older, that were guide that would be authorities or guide me in different endeavors in life. That kind of helped me to pick guys and gravitate towards guys that were going to help me accomplish things that were going to be positive influences on me, and so those guys, all four of those guys are really good. In fact, the TV up here over my corner just the other day, Bobby's Horn was over here. He I mean, I can find the studs and everything, but he had the drill bits and everything just to drill it all in and get it done in 5 minutes instead of me messing around for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, we all need a guy like that.
Yeah.
In our corner.
Yeah. I mean, the guys, he's 70, 71 years old now. He's like, come on, let me come over and do it. Hang out with you. I like doing this stuff, So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a conversation. Huge respect to my guest, everyone. Mark Connor, a fighter in every sense of the word, not just in the ring, but life, in faith, in grief, and in purpose. From the discipline of boxing we talked about, to the silence of loss, to the courage it takes to put your story on paper and let the world see it. This is one of those conversations that I'm sure it's going to stay with all of us. If there's one thing today it reminded us, it's this: your pain can become your purpose. Your loss can become your legacy, and your story isn't over just because a chapter ends. Mark, I want to say thanks for coming on. Thank you for taking the time with us. This was a lot of fun.
Man, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, and I wish it could go on longer, but I have to have some mercy on the audience.
Oh, no, understood. I always reserve the right to invite a guest back, and so we can go on. I've done it plenty of times. I mean, that's the good stuff. And then I always like to leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
So, hey, Mark, have a great rest of the evening, and thanks again. Thanks for talking with Donato.
Hey, thank you, man. I hope it's going to be a great Christmas for you.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
You as well.
Okay.
Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.